Babylon. I mean, just the name itself brings up these incredible images, right? Glittering temples, massive walls, legendary power. For thousands of years, this place was the absolute heart of Mesopotamia. But here's the thing. For a city with such a famous beginning, its ending is, well, it's a mystery, a huge one.
And you know what? I couldn't agree more with this quote. We have these epic, dramatic stories for the fall of Rome, the burning of Alexandria. But for Babylon, there's just this blank space where this huge grand finale should be.
And we're not talking about some minor city-state here. The Babylonians were absolute intellectual giants. They literally gave us trigonometry. The star charts they wrote, they're still the basis for the ones we use today. And they created one of the very first written legal codes. Their culture shaped the entire Near East for thousands of years. So that's the big question we're going to dig into. Why is Babylon's downfall so quiet, so absent from our history books? To figure it out, we've got to look at the moments when it really could have all come crashing down. Okay, let's start at the beginning, or at least Babylon's first big golden age. We're talking about its most famous early king, Hammurabi.
This is our first potential crime scene for the fall of Babylon.
So Hammurabi was this absolute master of diplomacy and war. He inherited a pretty small kingdom, but through a series of really brilliant moves, he managed to unify all of Mesopotamia. For the very first time, the whole region became known as Babylonia, the land of Babylon. It was a huge deal. But of all the things he did, Hammurabi's most famous legacy is, of course, his law code. He had 282 laws carved onto this massive stone pillar for everyone to see. He was trying to create a standard of justice for his whole new empire. The idea was to stop all the chaotic, endless revenge cycles with a predictable, if pretty harsh, system of order. But, as we see all the time in history, empires built by one great person often struggle after they're gone. About 150 years after Hammurabi died, the Hittites came storming down from what's now Turkey. They sacked the city, looted everything they could carry, and ended Hammurabi's dynasty for good. Okay, so, case closed, right? A foreign invasion, a sacked city, the royal family is gone. Surely this was the fall of Babylon. Well, not quite. And this is where the story gets really interesting. See, the Hittites just kind of sacked the city and went home. But Babylonian culture, it turned out to be incredibly tough. In the chaos that followed, a new group called the Kassites took over. But, and this is the key part, instead of wiping out Babylonian culture, they adopted it. Babylon was rebuilt, the language survived, the religion survived. The civilization literally outlasted its own government. All right, let's jump forward a full 1,000 years. After centuries of being ruled by others, Babylon rises again, bigger and badder than ever. And this brings us to our second big candidate for the fall, the Neo-Babylonian Empire. So it's really important to keep these two peaks separate in your mind. Hammurabi's era, that was all about law and unifying the region. But this second golden age, under a guy named Nebuchadnezzar II, was all about building a city so spectacular it would just blow people's minds. And oh, it absolutely did. Nebuchadnezzar went on this insane building spree. This is the era of the legendary Ishtar Gate, covered in that brilliant blue glazed brick. He built the massive Etemenanki, ziggurat, which is probably the real inspiration for the whole Tower of Babel story. He basically turned Babylon into the largest, most magnificent city on the entire planet. But this new golden age didn't last very long. In 539 BC, there was a new superpower on the block, the Persian Empire, led by Cyrus the Great, and they showed up right at the gates. The last Babylonian king wasn't very popular, and apparently, the city fell to the Persians without even a major fight. All right, this has to be it. This has to be the one, right? The end of their independence, swallowed up by a massive foreign empire. This must be the real fall of Babylon. But again, it's just more complicated than that. Cyrus actually came in acting like a liberator, not some brutal conqueror. He publicly respected the city's gods and traditions. So Babylon stayed a super important cultural and religious hub. The crucial difference, though, is that it was no longer the center of the world. It was now just one of 5 Persian capitals. It was a demotion, and one it would never really recover from. So if neither of these huge, dramatic conquests counts as the fall, then what in the world actually happened? Well, the answer isn't some big event. It's a long, slow fade into irrelevance. The real story plays out over hundreds of years. You can see it right here. Alexander the Great saw its potential. He planned to make it his world capital. But then he died, right there in Nebuchadnezzar's palace. His successor built a new capital just down the road and moved most of the people there. And slowly, over the next few centuries, the city just emptied out. The last cuneiform texts were written, and by the time the Romans were around, Babylon was pretty much a ghost town, sinking back into the mud.
So, what's the final verdict on our historical mystery? When did Babylon actually fall? How did it happen? Here's the truth of it. Babylon's fall wasn't a single dramatic moment. It wasn't one battle or one conquest. It was a process of just becoming obsolete. And I think this quote just absolutely nails it. For centuries, Babylon was the model for what a civilization should be. It was the trendsetter. But eventually, the rest of the world changed. The world got bigger, more interconnected. New ideas, new centers of power started popping up. Babylon's influence didn't just vanish overnight, but it got diluted. It became just one voice in a whole chorus of other great cultures, like the Persians and the Greeks and the Egyptians. It didn't fall into ruin, it just faded into irrelevance. And that really leaves us with a much bigger question to think about, doesn't it? Does a civilization truly end when its walls are torn down, or does it end when its ideas just aren't unique anymore? The story of Babylon suggests that maybe the real end doesn't come with a bang, but when the world just quietly moves on.